USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, February 20th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Jim Connelly, and before we get started, a reminder that this episode is sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York. NCAA.com/Frozen4. Well, the ECAC Hockey League has a logjam at the top of the standings, and smack dab in the middle of that is Yale.
And we are joined now by the head coach of Yale hockey, and that is Keith Allain. And Keith, a very good weekend of hockey. You're coming off last weekend wins at home against Colgate and a very good Cornell team in your league. What does this do for your season in terms of giving you some momentum down the stretch?
Well, I think, hopefully it'll do a lot for our season. We'll know at the end of this weekend, but I think our guys feel good about themselves. I think that we played really well as a team in all three zones, and we got the results we wanted to. So hopefully, if we're smart, we'll learn from that and bring that same effort this weekend.
You've had some ebbs and flows in this season. You had a 5-game winning streak at one point, but besides that, it's been, kind of consistency, get some wins, you got a couple of losses in there. What has your season felt like as a whole, particularly as the head coach, just kind of watching your team grow and develop?
Well, I think we've made progress as the season's gone on. You mentioned ebbs and flows. I think that's the nature of a college hockey season. Our league is very competitive. You're playing good teams who are fighting really hard to win each and every weekend. So I think you're going to see ebbs and flows. But in general, I think we're a better hockey team now than we were in November. And hopefully we'll be a better hockey team 3 weeks from now than we are today.
I look at your stats, and obviously there's a guy that stands out and has stood out for quite some time, Joe Snively. Talk a little bit about what he has meant, obviously, over the 4 years to your program, but what he means this season as such a leader.
Yeah, he's our offensive leader, that's for sure. And, you have to score goals to win games. And Joe was a guy that it almost doesn't matter who he plays with or who he's playing against. He's going to get quality scoring chances each and every game he plays. But offense isn't the only part of the game. But in that part of the game, he's our best player.
Your back end, Sam Tucker and Corbin, I'm going to say the name, Kaspersky.
Good job.
Thanks. Split time. I know goaltending is always a big position for any team. What have the two of them meant to your team? And do you feel that the ability to rotate goaltenders is something you like to do?
I like to do whatever works. That's how I go about things. And I think we've got two guys that are pretty evenly matched, and it makes sense for us to rotate right now. We got off to a nice start, and I think a big reason we got off to the good start was that both goaltenders are playing well. And, as you know, in this game, goaltending is the most important. I think it's the most important individual position in all of team sports. And right now, our guys have confidence in both guys. They seem to be comfortable in the rotation, and we'll stick with it as long as it works.
We're talking with Keith Allain, head coach at Yale. Coach, one of the things that's unique to the ECAC is having the travel partner system where you play different teams on each night. Are there certain challenges that brings to you both as a home team and then also as a road team having to travel to two different places?
Yeah, I guess one of the challenges that are different than other leagues is that we have to prepare for two opponents on a weekend versus our focus in on one. And then when you're on the road, particularly our last travel weekend was QPAC Princeton. So after the game on Friday night, you've got a 3-hour bus ride. You're getting in at 2:00 in the morning if the weather's good to get ready for your next game. But it's something that every team in our league has to deal with. So it's what we're used to and what we're comfortable with.
You mentioned the tightness of the league. It's probably as tight this season as it's ever been. How important is it as you get down towards the playoffs and the tight upper end of the league to be playing for that top four final position in the league and getting that playoff bye?
Well, I mean, obviously you can get to the championship in all ways, right? You could finish 12th and you have a chance to get to the championship. But I do think that getting the bye gives you a weekend to work on parts of your game, gives you time to rest up guys that are banged up, and then it'll give you a home series is all you need to get to the league championship. So it's a lot easier path if you get the bye.
Speaking of home ice, I had the opportunity. I've been to Ingalls Rink a couple times before, but never for a Yale game until last Friday. And there's a great atmosphere in there. But one thing that struck me is what a good fan base you have of non-students, community people, probably a lot of alumni. What's the fan support like for you at Yale?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've been really blessed. I think Yale hockey is big on campus, but it's bigger in the greater New Haven community. And, we sell out games when our students are on vacation. And, being a Yale hockey player brings with it a lot of different experiences. But I mean, I talk to guys that have been out of here for 10, 15 years, and they always talk about Saturday night at Ingalls as being one of the most special feelings they've ever had in their lives. And it's due in no small part to the fantastic, fan base that we have. And it's, we're ingrained in the community, and it's a fun thing.
More with Keith Allain in a moment, but first a word from our sponsor, the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
Speed and precision, unrelenting power. This trophy is not given, it must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
With a shot. Saved by Morris. Takes the shot.
Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 and get your tickets today.
This is USCHO Spotlight. We are talking with Yale head coach Keith Allain. And Keith, a national championship going back a little over 5 years ago, and back-to-back for the ECAC with the Yale and Union. What have you seen that mean in terms of recruiting, in terms of just visibility of the programs? Do you still feel that there's kind of those two national titles being a push into the ECAC in terms of bringing in some of the better talent, opening the eyes of those recruits that you have to talk to throughout all of the U.S., Canada, and really the whole hockey world right now?
Yeah, I mean, recruiting is a battle here at Yale. I mean, we're able to sell the best education in the world, but our admission standards are tough, and we don't have athletic scholarships. But I know coming off that national championship, when you're talking to someone from Minnesota, for example, because we beat the Gophers to get there, that they know what Yale hockey is about, and they kind of have an attraction to Yale hockey. But I think we fight hard for every player that we get here. My assistant coaches do a fantastic job, and it's a competitive marketplace.
You now, over the last at least it's about 12, 13, 14 plus years, have had a natural rival that has kind of developed up the road in Quinnipiac. Obviously, playing them for a national title when you won it was probably something special as well. What is that rivalry developed into? Has it developed as much as you or everybody around the New Haven and Hamden area would hope it would?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have any hopes for it. I mean, I think we share geography, but we've got some traditional rivals that our alums get more excited about, particularly teams from the Ivy League.
We're talking with Keith Allain, and you mentioned Ivy League. I look at who's in front of you. It's Quinnipiac and Cornell, and Cornell's a team you beat last week. But you have so many teams in there, and the Ivies have had quite a season. Harvard just a point behind, Brown a few points behind, Dartmouth right behind. Has this been one of the better Ivy League hockey seasons that you've seen in recent years?
I think you're probably right. I haven't thought about it, but and I mean, you didn't mention Princeton, who's had a little bit of a tough season, but they won the ECAC championship last year, and they beat us 2 weekends ago. It's Ivy League hockey is, I mean, it's really one of the, I'd say besides lacrosse, one of the only sports in the Ivy League that we can legitimately play top 10 teams and beat them and expect to beat them and be top 10 teams ourselves. So, if you're looking for a national prominently sport, ice hockey is one of them the Ivy League can stand up in.
We can stay with the Ivy as we look at the two games you're going to play this weekend. Dartmouth, that has been probably a consistently inconsistent team, but there's nights that they score 7 goals and there's nights that they have a hard time scoring. But then Harvard, the next night you're going to play, that's a top 20 team as your club is. This weekend, what are your kind of expectations from these two games? What do these two opponents bring for you in terms of challenges?
Well, they're both very challenging. You know, we played them earlier in the year here at home. Dartmouth beat us 3-0. It was a 1-0 game, and they got 2 goals, and we pulled the goalie. So it was a pretty even game. But they're competitive. They're smart. They're playing really well structurally right now, and they compete for pucks. So that'll be an interesting battle. And then Harvard's, got, I think, the best power play in the country. It's not the best. It's in the top 5, and we tied them at home back in November, and it was a great game as well. So it'll be a really fun weekend for our kids.
Well, it should be a great weekend this weekend. Then as the season plays out, and you'll finish with Princeton and Quinnipiac, the race down the stretch here in the ECAC seems to be one of the best in the country. Keith, thanks so much for your time today, and thanks for joining us, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
That's Yale coach Keith Allain. Jim, we talked at the beginning and talked with Keith about this, about the logjam, the tight standings at the top of ECAC hockey. And I know that's the story throughout most of college hockey, is parity is really the rule of the day. But what a race it's going to be to the finish for those first 4 spots in the ECAC and that all-important first-round bye.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parity in college hockey. This league kind of takes it to a point that's beyond. You're talking 3 points separate the top 5 teams, and then when you look at second place through 8th place, it's 6 points. It's 7 points from first to 8th. It's a little crazy. You're going to have a battle for who's going to win this league, and that's a nice little feather in everybody's cap. But everybody wants that first round bye, so you don't have to play that first weekend, then you're at home during the quarterfinals. You're talking about some good teams. I think Harvard is a really good team. They're potentially an NCAA tournament team. Right now, they're right on that line between whether they get that bye and whether they don't. They'll have to play good hockey. Yale is right there. I think there's some very good teams that have put themselves, or not really put themselves, have just become in precarious positions. This has been a league that nobody wants to run away with. There's some good parity. There's some teams down the bottom of this league. Princeton, as you heard Keith Allain allude to, this is not a bad Princeton team. They can beat you on any night. Brown has played well lately. Dartmouth is a dangerous team. Union, which I saw early and thought they were one of the best teams I saw early in the season, they're sitting all the way down in 8th place right now. So this is a very tight standings, and the thought of where your team is going to position itself will mean so much in the playoffs, and some very good teams are not going to be in the best position.
Well, as I mentioned, I got to see Yale on Friday night in their game against Colgate, and a few things impressed me. I thought Yale really moved the puck up ice well. Of course, everybody likes to rush and attack these days, but they did that well. And I thought defensively, they did a very good job of limiting Colgate's chances. So when you have that and good goaltending, you've got all the recipes there for success.
I think every Yale team under Keith Allain has probably been some of the better defensive teams in the country. Their challenge, I think, has been transition at times. And when you're transitioning the way that they are right now, and they're doing it very well, you're going to be a better team in the CCAC league. And I know they love to talk about the Ivy League championship too, that, you're in a great Ivy League position as well. And these teams are so competitive, and they're going to be tough outs because of this is not your grandfather's or your father's ECAC Ivy League. These teams have a lot more skill. They're not as physical. They still bring that physical presence, but at the same time, I think the speed and skill of these teams has increased, and I think that's what makes teams like Cornell, teams like Yale, teams like Harvard and Brown very dangerous in the postseason.
I was also interested in the discussion on the travel partners system in the ECAC. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago on this podcast with Nate Owen, our ECAC correspondent. And when you talk about that Quinnipiac to Princeton trip on a Friday to Saturday and a 2 a.m. arrival time, that's tough. That game the next day after some bus legs and a late night has got to be difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. But that's the reality of the league. The teams, for the most part, are used to it. Some coaches, if you go into Hockey East or you go into leagues, NCHC, where it's almost always repeat partners, home and home, or 2 games on the road, especially in the NCHC where it's 2 games on the road or 2 games at home. They'll tell you that they would almost prefer playing a different opponent every night, because when you play a team on Friday and you beat them, it's very hard to beat them again on Saturday night. Now, 2 opponents, you also have to prepare for 2 teams. You have to have your assistants doing the pre-scout on these 2 teams. And you know that the second team is coming, but you have to really focus on what you're going to do special teams wise, what your strategy is going to be on your forecheck. And then you have to get your guys basically within 24 hours to erase their memory and come back and play a different system sometimes on the second night. So that, I think, every league has its own challenges. That is obviously the biggest challenge in the ECAC.
Well, that'll do it for this edition of USCHO Spotlight. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.